Welcome to Story Punk. I am Scott.
I'm Drew.
And I'm John.
John? Who's John? John, are you our guest today?
I am.
You are. Well, this is Jon Berkowitz, and he is our first guest on Story Punk. So welcome to Story Punk.
And
welcome.
tallest guest.
And also tallest guest, taller than the
And let's
tall
see if we
host.
can keep that. I wonder if we'll be able to keep that throughout the many guests that we hopefully will have.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's a high standard.
It is.
I'll be taller by the end.
That's true. That's true. Well, you just told us some good news from your firm, so we can talk about how that'll make you stand up a little bit straighter. But I wanted to say who Jon Berkowitz is. And Jon Berkowitz, he works as the vice president and creative director of a firm called Aspect. They are an integrated entertainment marketing agency, and he'll tell us a little bit more about what that means. He has spent more than 20 years in the business working on a lot of projects that you have definitely heard of and are probably a big fan of. He went to Hamilton College and studied comparative literature and then got his MFA at USC. And I would think it's fair to say that was really the beginning of his career in business because USC is pretty central to that. And he just currently right now, his firm's projects include Wicked for Good, which is coming out shortly, and Black Ops 7, which just came out. He has won many awards, Emmys, and we just learned he just won about 20 Clios across different projects. So congratulations, that's very exciting. Thank you. Welcome to Story Punk. So
yes, welcome.
If you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, because I skimpy bio, you tell us what you want to tell us, but go ahead.
Sure. So I'm a vice president and a creative director at Aspect. Aspect is one of many integrated entertainment marketing agencies in Los Angeles. There are others around the world and a couple in New York. And what we do is sell entertainment. So in the case of Aspect, we work with the marketing agencies at all the big studios, Warner Brothers, Disney, Paramount, etc. The streamers, Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, HBO Max, and video game publishers, including Activision, Riot, etc. And we sell their entertainment properties and sometimes the services themselves. So we will make, advertisements for the platforms, for Netflix, for Hulu, to get you to subscribe and watch on the platform. We're an integrated agency because we have everything that those clients need to make those assets, those videos, radio ads, online ads.
So in-house production of everything.
Mostly I would say we focus on editorial. Most of the companies like us, our competitors include, I don't want to talk about our competitors too much, but like Trailer Park, Buddha Jones, AV Squad, Zealot. These are all...
Never heard of them.
These are companies like Aspect who we compete with. And they all do kind of similar kind of things, more or less. Are mostly editorial companies. So Aspect has 22 top of the line editors. Mm-hmm. You would call, they are known for cutting trailers or teasers. They're amazing at taking footage, a finished movie, or even in the case of an animated movie, take a movie that's still in animatic phase, right? Like just drawn pictures and audio and figuring out long before the animation really happens, long before you have finished visual effects, how to cut together a teaser and a trailer, because sometimes a teaser for an animated movie come out a year before the movie, right? So I
definitely have questions about how that all works.
Okay,
because that is I think one of those things about getting people excited to go see a movie. And you'll, like you said, this movie's coming out next year. Oh man, now I have to wait, but I'm excited. So you succeeded, but like, what's even there to put together? I would definitely want to talk about that.
I think the same thing. I know with video games sometimes come out years before. That's got to be interesting to try to create excitement for something like that.
Oh yeah, that's a huge challenge, but one of the most gratifying ones. So I'm eager to get back to that.
Excellent.
So we have, a big team of editors. And in the past, they would work on Avid systems. Now we cut on Premiere, but they're great at cutting picture and sound together. And then we have copywriters. So we have a team of copywriters at Aspect. I think Aspect's copywriters are the best in the business. They are our secret weapon, absolutely. They will concept. So they will come up with, what's the big idea here, especially for one of those like teasers, right? Where there's nothing to work with. They're the brains, I'd say, who are coming up with those big ideas, right? But they'll also write copy. So when a TV campaign is coming up for a movie, they'll write a packet with 40, 50 scripts of what are those 3 cards in the body of the spot that come out, right? What is the copy? We have a team of music supervisors, and they'll figure out, what are we cutting with? What should this be, a cover? Should this be score? Can we get a custom piece made? And they have relationships with the composers who are making that custom audio for us. Sometimes it's just sound design. They'll help us with that, but they are the music specialists. Then we have I would call them account supervisors, creative producers, my bosses for the most part.
Okay.
And they're the team who have the relationship with the marketing executives at the studio. So when the SVP of marketing at Warner Brothers has a new Christopher Nolan movie coming out, that guy is going to call my boss and say, hey, we got this new movie coming out. I want Aspect on it. Pull together a team. I'm going to brief you.
Do you? Let me ask you a quick question about that. Do you? This is a question about essentially how the industry works. Because I worked in advertising. I was a copywriter for I don't know, about 8 years or something. And so the process of pitching and the insanity of that, and working the 90-hour week and all those things to get it in there. You're pitching to get the job, but you're really building the relationship. So if you really do something great for, I was going to almost said 20th Century Fox, but just let's say 20th Century. If you do something really good for them, you build that relationship. Do you have to pitch every time, or like how long does it take for them to call you and say, hey, we worked with you, we love you, this new movie's coming out?
We don't have to pitch every time. There's those filmmakers who everyone wants to cut on their movies.
Sure.
I just mentioned Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan movie comes out. Everybody's going to say to this executive, I want to cut on Tenet. I want to cut on The Odyssey. Mm-hmm. And people are going to say, we'll do it for free. Oh. Right?
Yeah, I've been there.
So, depending on the movie, that studio may, put a couple, 2, 3 vendors on the campaign, and they will pay for that creative thinking. But then there will also be those vendors who will they'll just cut free trailers, and they'll just, you do that to try to get in early on in the campaign. Generally, this is not a rule, but generally once a vendor wins, let's say 1 or 2 of the teaser's trailers, it's sort of deemed that they get the movie, and then they're often on it for the whole campaign. Depending on the size of the campaign, other vendors may come in and pitch in. But for a lot of movies, that's why you want to go hard for those teasers and trailers, because then down the line, you may be cutting 1 or 2 teasers trailers, but you may be cutting 20 or 30 TV spots for the campaign. Okay. So financially, from a profit standpoint, you really want to stick through it through the end. So I was mentioning editorial, copywriting, music supervision, account supervision, and then there's my department, which I lead, which I'm a creative director of, alongside some creative partners that I have, which is the motion design department. And so for your listeners who don't know what motion design is, you think of graphic design. You go outside, you see a billboard, or you open up a magazine and you see a designed layout for an advertisement or an article. That's static, non-moving graphic design, right? What is the typography like? Why am I choosing these fonts? What emotion am I trying to communicate through the design and the placement of typography, color, image, and the composite? How does it all come together, right? We do that, but we do it moving, so in animation. So, your listeners, I'm sure, have probably watched teasers and trailers, and they can clearly understand that we're going to be editing together motion video that was shot for the movie, right? And obviously they understand music supervision because they're listening to the music that they're hearing underneath the trailer. But there's also motion design in those trailers. So you'll see cards. We call them cars, interstitial cards or body cards. And that is how you see the copy throughout the trailer. So you'll see a card that says starring Tom Cruise.
Okay.
From producer Jerry Bruckheimer, or This Summer, right? In the old days, you'd also hear a voiceover artist. You don't tend to do that anymore. And then at the very end of the trailer, you'll see a big fancy main title. And it'll slam on, slide on, explode on, whatever. However it animates on, you'll see the name of the movie. And it's usually looks expensive, right? It's the letters are three-dimensional. They have extrusion. They have a metal texture to them, for example.
Right.
Maybe there's smoke or fire swirling around it that reveals it, like Harry Potter. So my team designs and animates that moving typography. So that's motion design. And that's kind of alongside a lot of support and assistant editors and other support staff. That's kind of what an integrated marketing agency like ours has. My team, by the way, and we'll try to distinguish this, I guess, as we talk, is half of what my team does is working on the trailer design.
Okay.
And the other half of what my team does really doesn't have much to do with marketing at all. We are working on what's called title sequences for the movies and the TV shows themselves. And so, when you're watching a movie or TV show, at the very beginning or at the very end, there is a fancifully designed sequence where you see the main credits of the movie, directed by, edited by, cinematography, and the names of the actors. So, if your listeners have seen a Mission Impossible movie, at the movie's beginning, there's a scene from the movie. At the end of that scene, you see a sequence where the fuse to the bomb is sparkling and moving, and you see the names animate on, and it's very flashy. We would design and animate sequences like that.
An Aspect would do the whole thing.
The whole thing. So we work directly with the movie's director usually, and the editor often, and we are often pitching against 2 or 3 or 4 other companies to win that specific job. So there are other companies like ours. Usually those other companies are not also trailer companies. They are purely motion design boutique agencies.
Gotcha.
And all they do is stuff like that, either title sequences, graphic sequences. Sometimes they're also doing commercial work or, work that isn't title sequence, but kind of like high motion design. Aspect is pretty unique in that we also do title sequences. But we can get to that. So that's the context for who I am, I think, and
Thank you.
and what I do.
Actually, I do have a question. When you were talking about like when a company does a couple of the teasers and they do it for free, and then they get they're hired for the whole campaign. Do you handle the social media aspect of the advertising? Is that separate? Does another company handle that, or do you handle all of it?
All of it.
So
All
even
of
like
it.
the little 10-second things that pop up on your feed on Facebook, you guys would handle that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that's becoming more and more and more important. And yes, there are agencies who focus on, we call it digital and social. But these days, Aspect and all of our competitors absolutely have to be able to work on that.
It seems like it would
thing.
be, I guess, in a company's best interest to be a sort of a one-stop shop for something like that.
Absolutely. And honestly, that's where most of your eyeballs are.
Yeah.
It's just essential for the studios for them to be able to get out there. Yeah.
I've noticed the trend in my social media feeds of advertisements especially for movies, some TV shows too, where they're trying to make them look like they're very low. I call it lo-fi. I'm thinking of in terms of music, but sort of just stripped down. It's somebody just it looks like it's an influencer that I've never seen before talking about a movie. They're just doing it hey, I saw One Battle After Another, and this is the best movie I've seen all year. And is that something? Are they actually hiring a company to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
So influencers are a huge part of the advertising business.
Okay.
Ideally for a movie, it's all invisible, which is why you don't know.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to know. It's
I saw
supposed
that.
to
I was
seem
like,
organic, right?
yeah.
This guy, and I see some of these too, are already in your feed. If it's on TikTok or Instagram Reels or whatever, you're already watching. You're supposed to think this guy who thinks like me loved this movie and is selling this movie to me and saying organically like a friend, boy, you should really consider going to see this movie, and here's why I love it. And
It does ping something in your head when you see it, because you're like, oh, this
Absolutely.
seems like a real recommendation.
oh my God. I mean, I have seen behind the curtain of advertising, and I still go see movies or watch a show or will try a show because of that. So oftentimes influencers are paid to be a part of a campaign like that. There are influencers who say, I don't believe in that product or that movie or that show. I'm not going to do that. Others will sell themselves to do that. But then, of course, there are also people out there like you guys, who just love the medium, love the movie or the show or whatever. They talk about it organically because they want to share their feelings about it.
And we do have advertising slots available.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So it can really be both.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question about, it kind of ties into the influencers idea. You're talking about working on, we're going to make a trailer for a movie that's not coming out for a year. So that's an ongoing relationship, hopefully, that you will, as a company, that you will maintain to work on that may turn into other things. So the movie came out. You're not done, right? So
Ideally, we're not.
Ideally, you're not done. So you have, because you were talking about cards and things, and you were talking about influencers, and this trailer that I saw, it's one of those, it's just full of quotes from critics and best movie of the year, and all the publication names come up and all those cards, all those kinds of things. So there's a goal for your business to say, we're just going to keep doing this. We're going to keep promoting this movie. We're going to keep doing it, because to me, when I think about what is a trailer, what is a credit sequence, any of these things, and of course the marketing, you guys are part of the identity of the movie. You are setting the identity of the movie. So if I see a trailer for what's the new one, the new Avatar movie, I mean, I know that
Fire and Ash.
Fire and Ash, right? I know that's coming out. I mean, I've heard of that kind of stuff. But that first trailer is the first time that, or maybe a TV spot. I love movies, so I like watching trailers just on my own anyway. But the first time that I see that, I go, that's what that movie is about. And so the idea that you get to continue to define that. I mean, have there been any situations where you guys did some work and maybe a director or a studio came to you and said, we actually want you to do this too? Like, this might actually affect the movie. Because I know the reason that you do what you do is because you love movies and you work in the movie industry. So is there any time that something like that has happened where somebody, that was making the movie said, you guys did something I really like and I want to do something with that? Has that ever happened?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Lots of times. But I guess the first thing I want to mention is sort of riffing on the idea you saw a post-release advertisement for a movie. Aspect as a business, we want to do as much on as many things as we possibly can. And so for us, and sort of being that one-stop shop means we can't just stop when the movie is released. So a huge part of our business is what's called post-release. It used to be called home entertainment, right? A movie would come out on Blu-ray or VHS even. And Aspect's been around for, I think, 45 years now.
Wow.
So
Okay.
Aspect, that was a huge part of our business, was the VHS and ultimately Blu-ray reveal of a movie.
If anybody listening doesn't know what VHS is, you can just contact us through social media. I'll be happy to explain.
Send a letter, actually.
Send a letter, yeah. Send a telegram.
So post-release is a huge part of our business now. So there aren't as many agencies who are still working in post-release, but Aspect is one of the most prolific companies.
Okay.
You'll see on our website we do a ton of work, especially for Disney, and lots of other studios working in post-release. So, ideally, it's the kind of thing where we've already done the theatrical campaign, and then our post-release team comes in, and they're going to sort of start from scratch, but build upon what we've already done for a year on this theatrical, trajectory. So the copywriters will start again thinking about, hey, what are the big ideas, concepts for home entertainment or post-release? Our music supervisors may start over or riff or build upon what they've done before. My team, motion design, we may refer to what was done theatrically in our design for what the post-release advertisements are going to look like, or maybe we'll think about some new things. There's going to be new assignments.
And that's when you might say, well, we established the typography of, let's say, Wicked for Good. And so that may be the same thing that you see in the credits. So of course you're going to bring that identity through. So it really depends on the
Exactly.
project. And I would assume something like that, or any of these movies that are properties that are completely original properties. That's a different ballgame than, well, we're doing Wicked, which is as a sequel to a movie, which is a version of a musical, which is a sequel to one of the greatest movies ever made, which I'm sorry, a prequel, which is also, has its own history and all those kinds of things. I would presume that sort of, just from a design standpoint, there's a lot more stay in your lane kind of stuff that you have to do with
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. We haven't been on the Wicked campaign. We worked on the Wicked movie with
okay.
with that other half of our. We worked on the title sequences for both Wicked Part 1 and For Good. But that is one occasion where the synchronicity didn't happen, right? So we did not work on the Wicked campaign for whatever reason. That that team at Universal wanted to work with.
I did think their ads were missing something special, so that makes a lot of sense. I understand that.
But there are a lot of times, in fact, where there is synchronicity. So there have been times where, and that's actually a big part from a business standpoint of why Aspect lets me do what I do. Because sometimes it's a real obstacle to the company that half the graphics department at any given time might be working on a title sequence instead of on the trailers that need to happen. Obviously we can grow and shrink as we need to. That's part of my job. But ideally, there are times where a title sequence begins before we've been brought into a campaign. The filmmakers build a relationship with us. They like the title sequence and they feel like, wow, these guys really seem to get this movie. I like their style. I like their vibe. I'm going to talk to the marketing executive and say, hey, can we give Aspect a crack at the trailer? So that happens often.
Gotcha.
That is ideal. Other times the trailer might be the first thing that starts and they're having a good experience working with us on the marketing. And maybe they're struggling with the title sequence, or they're not sure what to do, or I get word that, or I think, oh, we're coming up on 6 months pre-release. Maybe I could reach out and see if the marketing team can get me a conversation with the post-production supervisor on the movie and see if they'll let us come in and pitch. So that's also happened. So there's different ways that we can come into both opportunities. And then there's lots of synchronicity. So, the thing that comes to mind, it might be a bit older at this point, is, we've worked on, John M. Chu is a director.
I wanted to ask you about it because that's, I think, a long-term relationship.
Long-term
back
relationship.
to USC.
Yes,
so.
exactly. Yeah, we knew each other at USC. But Crazy Rich Asians comes to mind. Mm-hmm. So we were brought on early at Crazy Rich Asians. We can even have a whole conversation about Crazy Rich Asians, but we did that texting sequence. So the movie starts, and there's this moment where this piece of information needs to travel around the world very quickly. And we came up with the visual identity of how that piece of information, that image of this girl and her boyfriend, were going to travel around to all of the different players that we were then going to see throughout the movie.
So in the actual film?
In the actual film
and
itself.
How were you approached? Like the director?
In that case,
did he actually ask you personally? Okay.
Yes. So John, luckily, will often, when he's already generally has cut the movie a little bit. These days he has an editor who he works with on every movie, Myron Kirstein. So he and Myron are kind of figuring out the big picture. What's the structure of this movie? How does it flow, right? The big picture editorial main questions they're answering first. They're going to focus on that. But then at some point they're like, hey, we know that we have this texting sequence at the front of Crazy Rich, and we know that we're going to need a title sequence, and we've kind of figured out it needs to be at the end of the movie instead of the front of the movie, or vice versa. And they'll call me first, or someone on their team will call me first. I mean, at this point, we've worked on 12 projects together.
Wow.
Luckily, I think we've proven ourselves over and over.
You must be doing a good job.
And we really, honestly, we have a really good time working together. It's about as good as it gets. And so on Crazy Rich, that's what happened. And so we got the chance to figure that out. And so in that case, they didn't know what they were going to do it all. They knew that they had a music cue for that sequence. I have to remember to get back to your original question.
That's okay. It's that kind of podcast.
So they had a music cue. They had an image, this photograph that needed to travel around the world, and that was basically it. And they had some B-roll of sort of other characters who could be sort of digesting this piece of information. And they said, figure this out, give us a proposal. And so at that point, it's wonderful that Aspect, we're not just a motion boutique. We also do a lot of editorial. And this was a big editorial question. So it was a combination of really everything that Aspect does. So we came up with a visual language of what it might look like for digital information to travel. And we came up with a really beautiful sort of graphic language of colored lines that swoop in and around these different scenes, and they come in and they land on people's phones, and then the phones bing, and then they kind of swoop up from the phones and they travel to another shot, another part of the world, and then we kind of fly into a map, and these little digital, these sort of colored lines are now pinging around the world, and then so you kind of also know where you are in the world, because we need to land in Singapore. So there's a moment where we land in Singapore. So anyway, this is a long story to get to. That sequence was so popular that it was used on everything. Like there was this one moment where I woke up and somebody sends me a clip from Good Morning America, and Good Morning America had spoofed our texting sequence. And done a custom shoot of their correspondents walking through New York, and these little colored swoops are flying around.
That's quite a compliment.
It was a huge compliment.
Yeah. I think you're getting taller right now, as you're saying.
So that kind of thing. Sometimes our a little sequence that we'll use in the movie, like in the case of Now You See Me Too.
Okay.
We did an animated prologue scene where they're talking about sort of the nature of illusion, and he's giving the backstory of the Four Horsemen, the magicians who are the main characters in this movie. And John wanted this. John wasn't sure how to express this backstory, and so we used the language of illusion, of optical illusions, to kind of tell this backstory. And that was a piece that was, the studio liked it so much, John liked it so much, they just put that out as a teaser. So that was like, a part of the movie that they felt like didn't, if the audience were to see it, it wasn't really going to poison anything or spoil anything. And it kind of acted as a teaser, and also got the world, gave them that backstory so they could come to the movie with some context of what had happened in movie number one. So that came out as a teaser. I think we actually won a Clio for that, for best motion graphics in a piece of advertising.
And it turns out that wasn't your first, so.
Wasn't my first. No, nor my last.
Nor your last.
Hopefully.
Actually, what did they ask? You were talking about like the scene. They had already, for that particular scene for Crazy Rich Asians, they had it was like a scene that they already had music set to. Now, this is something that one of the questions that we wanted to know about. When it comes to making a trailer, what is the process as far as choosing the music for a trailer? Is that something that you guys pitch with your package, or is that something maybe the director says, I want this song's in the movie, we want it? How does that work?
It varies. So for the most part, the process of, I'm going to sort of, this is the pencil version of the sketch version of how a trailer gets made. So like I said, the marketing executive at the studio or the streamer will have a relationship with, a creative producer at Aspect, my bosses usually, and we'll say, hey, we want you to work on this trailer. Watch the movie, and here's some. Usually, in a best case scenario, they'll give us some research on who the audience is for this movie, testing that they have for the movie if they've tested the movie, and depending on that executive, they'll have some ideas. sometimes they don't have ideas about how to sell the movie. But usually they'll say at the very least, hey, this is who the audience we're going after. We know we're going to get moms. We got to get their sons, their 14 or 16-year-old kids. Or we know we're going to get the dads for this movie because it's, action-y and there's, but we want this to be a date movie, right?
Let me just ask very quickly. When you say we watch the movie, there's stories of, we didn't lock that Marvel movie until 2 days before it came out, that kind of stuff. So are you more often than not, are you being given the movie or you're being given the movie, but they haven't finished the effects yet?
For the most part, we're getting the movie at a very early stage.
Okay.
So, when a movie's finished, there's a couple of rounds of cuts that happen, right? So the editor gets his or her cut. Usually that editor is allowed to work independently without the director even seeing what they come up with. So contractually, the editor usually gets a cut or two. Then the director is going to get his or her cut or two or three, depending what's in their contract. And then the studio sees that. Now, if the director has final cut, then that's it, right? Of course, the studio is going to make suggestions, and depending on the clout of the director.
Right. The director will nod and say thank you.
Yes. Or they'll integrate it and try to be friendly and try to, build the relationship and try to seem like they're easy to work with, right?
I guess that's why a lot of the biggest directors also become producers.
Yes,
and
exactly.
even studios. So they don't have to
Yes.
really worry about what final cut means.
Now, usually marketing doesn't even get to see anything until after that process is done. Not always, but usually. Maybe there's some event that needs to happen where that gets pushed earlier, but usually marketing and the studio are going to see it after the director's cut. And so it's usually at that point where marketing is going to get somebody thinking about a teaser or a trailer, and they will send us that movie. The visual effects won't be done. The music will be scratch, temporary. It's usually far from where the final movie ends up, but it's enough for us to see it and start to come up with ideas and come up with a proposal of how we think the movie should be sold.
Okay.
So that's usually when that happens. And so they'll send us that movie, but not always. So sometimes the movie is still being cut, and we'll get dailies. So for your listeners, dailies are basically every piece of film that's been shot. So we'll just get it as shots.
Just a big bucket.
Just a big bucket of footage.
Wow.
And, we'll get that, and then we'll have someone on our team, usually an assistant editor. It's a great job for an AE. We will say to them, cut the movie.
Wow.
And they'll have a week,
Wow.
2 weeks to cut the movie. But again, it's like our lead editors, they don't need to have it fine-tuned and nuanced, because they're taking little clips and they're figuring out how to sell the movie. What's the structure for the trailer, right? They're not necessarily telling you, the audience, the whole movie, although sometimes they are.
Yeah,
but
I to me, the alchemy of it is, that you can tell enough of the story without spoiling it. And I know there's a whole world of trailers that just do that. And I kind of don't understand why that's. Obviously, somebody prefers that, I guess. But their job to me is, what's the vibe?
Yeah.
And that's the magic that they're trying to pull together. I want to make Drew go see that movie. Now, I know you guys worked on Furiosa. Is that right?
We also worked on Fury Road.
Oh, you did?
But I'll tell you, and I have to, your audience is going to have to forgive me. I've worked on so many trailers at this point, literally thousands of them. And on a campaign like that, Fury Road was like hard fought amongst, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 different vendors. We were cutting on it, and there is, I'm sure Aspect has a trailer out there, but I just can't remember if that Comic-Con trailer was ours or Buddha Jones's, or because they were the other agency that was sort of winning at that point. So forgive me, I don't remember if that was ours. It may well have been.
That's
but
fine.
we worked on Fury Road, and we did a lot of work on Furiosa. We actually, and especially on the graphic side, we did a lot of really interesting work on Fury Road. We did the main title, that crazy steering wheel with the really cool sculpture of Furiosa on it. We did that,
With
and
all those like automotive parts.
Yes.
Circle. Yeah, okay.
Yes, exactly.
With that big bass.
Yes.
hit. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That's the one.
Is there for different types of there's certain styles of titles sequences. Do you guys have like is there like industry terms for a certain type of
Oh yeah.
yeah? Well,
In
could you
terms
share
of
them?
like the aesthetic
Yeah,
of it,
yeah,
like
yeah.
oh sure. I mean that's one of the things that
Something
I
like
think
the Furiosa one. Like, what do you guys call
that
in
one,
industry?
the Furiosa one, a term for that. I'd say it's more distinguished by so there's a range of tools that we use to make them, right?
Okay.
So something like Furiosa is going to be, we're going to heavily lean on what's called 3D animation.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean that it's stereoscopic. You have to look at it with glasses. It more means that like the elements that you're
pops.
seeing on screen, those elements have volume.
Okay,
They look
gotcha.
like they're real things. So they have volume to them. They have usually like a texture. They're made out of metal, wood, paint, something like that. And there is a virtual 3D camera that looks like it's a physical object in 3D space that was shot.
Okay.
It may be very heavily treated, meaning it may have textures that move on it, or it may actually animate, right? Like a character, like that sculpture, that 3D statue that you see in the Furiosa trailer. But it's so we would call that it's a 3D graphic.
So that's the
right?
shorthand you would use if you're saying something. This is what we're gonna try to do for this one.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. But then so I would, and then there are lots of motion design happens these days in that 3D space. So like I said, in a trailer, you might have typography that is 3D. So the letters, in that case, the Furiosa letters are actually 2D. They're flat.
Okay.
And they're just yellow. But the background behind it is all 3D and volumetric. So there's that sculpture, there's wind, there's a sandstorm, there's atmosphere, there's smoke.
And that kind, like, what do you call that kind of credit? Because there are movies which I'll ask you
It's
about.
a main
little bit later.
title.
But I mean, in terms of like that, like in Fury Road does the same thing. You have, as you said before, a sequence this is the movie has begun.
Yeah.
And then I think of it as then there's a smash of the title, and that's it. Like that you created that moving thing, and that's it, which is different than like The Kingdom. I don't know if you know that. Remember that Peter Berg movie? That's a classic, telling a story, setting up decades of history, all that kind of stuff, but graphically fascinating, really cool design, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know what you call those in the industry.
So Fury Road, when it's a standalone title, you would call it a title or a main title. The Kingdom, that is a title sequence.
Okay.
And there's a lot of famous title sequences. Seven is sort of like the most famous of the current day title sequences. So that's how you would distinguish. Then you have title sequences which are at the very end of the movie.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that.
So that you could distinguish in the industry. You would call those main on end title sequences.
Okay.
So it's a main title sequence, but it's on the end of the film.
Like Seven also had the crazy backwards one. The credits on the end of Seven ran backwards.
Oh yes. Now that's not a title sequence. That's called the end crawl. So,
I got you. Okay.
So at the very end of the movie.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Not like the Avengers where they show everybody. They show like the different. That's more of a
Yeah. So
Marvel really does a lot of that, right? Where they do
every
the
movie
end
has an end crawl. So that.
I'm sorry. I mean,
we're talking about like
the main,
what you were talking about.
the main end sequence.
Yes.
Like my example, I always think of is Edge of Tomorrow,
Yes.
which has all these incredible graphics of the machines and the weapons and all this kind of
Yes.
stuff that if you put it at the beginning, you wouldn't know what they are, but it might get your attention. But by the time you're at the end of the movie, you go, oh, that's the suit.
Exactly.
That's the storyline. That's all
Or
that kind of
Iron Man is another great one. All the Iron Man movies. So Imaginary Forces is one of our competitors. Actually, it's the company where I started my career. Actually, that was Prologue, I think, which is another competitor. But they worked on Iron Man and all those. That's at the end of the movie. So, Sorry, I missed. What was the question?
We got you off track. Sorry about that.
We were talking about what those
those
the
were
categories
called.
of titles
Yeah.
are, because I assume obviously within that there are different ones. Like the Kingdom is an example.
The Kingdom,
of
right.
setting up a story and telling you literally the history of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia
Yes.
to the very beginning of the fictional story.
Yeah.
which is it's realistic. It's not a superhero movie or
Yeah.
anything like that. Because to me, I love storytelling credits, but I also love when you almost surprise me with that main title card. I like that those are different emotional experiences.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
for me, the movie Prey, I like the Predator movies. I loved Prey. And you don't realize at the end of Prey, it's an all animated, like native art style kind of thing that's telling you the story of the movie. So I wouldn't want that on the beginning. I wouldn't realize what it is, but I wouldn't want that at the beginning. But at the very end, there's a little bit extra that tells you not only, oh, there's more, that gets paid off in the next two movies.
Yes.
Which I don't know if they knew that at the time. But that kind of end, because a lot of times I see the end sequences, like the beautiful ones of Iron Man, and I almost kind of feel bad because a lot of people leave, when the movie
Or
ends.
they hit the skip button.
Right, and I'm like, you're missing. Like, this is before I would ever think about like it's a whole industry and who these people are and stuff. I'm like, this is part of the movie. This is part of the emotional experience, all that kind of stuff.
So those choices are often made by the filmmakers when they're in the cutting room. Like I mentioned, John and Myron, right? They're figuring out those big structural issues. Now, they will often come to us and say, hey, what do you think? Where do you think the title sequence lives? And we'll watch the movie and we'll give them our advice about it. And then they'll decide if we're right or not. In the case of, and generally these days, it really comes down to those choices by the filmmakers, right? And sometimes those are structured in the script. So even when you read the script, it will say insert title sequence here, so something like that. These days, most movies, but not always, just begin. The filmmakers just want the story to start. Sometimes there's a treated studio logo beforehand, but even that, not always. Sometimes that will be sort of avoided. So
And you're talking about like
the
where
Warner
titles to
Brothers logo.
the Matrix movies that looks like the Matrix. It's
Yeah.
or the Furiosa and Fury Road.
Exactly.
They have the dirt, the worn look. All the
Yeah, sometimes a title sequence like The Kingdom will start out at the very beginning of the movie. I can't remember in The Kingdom if it just begins with that sequence or if there's like a button.
It does.
It does.
I don't think there's anything.
And I think it's wonderful when that happens. To me, and I think most motion designers would agree, like it's wonderful. The best expression of a title sequence is when it's more than just eye candy, right? It is like The Kingdom. It's fulfilling a function beyond that. I mean, even an eye candy title sequence at the beginning of a movie or a TV show can get the audience into the mood of the movie, right? So tonally, it is like laying the groundwork for us to settle in and get into the vibe of the movie before the actual live action begins, right? And The Kingdom is a great example of that because it is telling the audience all of that history, all of the context that they need to know in those 2 minutes before the movie actually begins, all while presenting the legally required credits that need to be shown.
Are you including examples like I think it was Waterworld is the Universal logo?
Yes.
And then all of the land slowly gets swallowed up by the sea. Like
Oh my God,
literally,
I
I think
haven't
that's
seen
how
that.
it just literally begins
Yeah.
with that. But that's just a moment. It's
Yeah.
not like that begins the story and then you watch the planet flood for 10 minutes or something. But
Yeah.
I love that as an example of getting you into the mood. And I mean, I'm not surprised, but I love that you have the opportunity to say we're the first ones out of the gate.
I
We're
mean,
the
that's
ones who are gonna
that's
do
the
it.
best.
That's the dream.
Yeah, that's the dream. Those are the best kinds of assignments. But these days, yeah, a lot of movies, the directors just want the story to start. But then other times, like, Wicked is a good example of this, right? Like Wicked just begins. Well, there is a really nice logo that we designed that is designed in a Wicked kind of aesthetic that definitely gets you into the mood of you're getting into the world of Wicked, the colorful world of Wicked. It's green, it's pink. It kind of gives you this vibe of old school Universal, right? From the 40s when Wizard of Oz came out. But the title sequence is at the very end of the movie. So at the very end of the movie of part one, Elphaba has flown up She's Superwoman, basically, and you're just like, the whole audience is crying, right? It's this really emotional ending.
And it's the big showstopper song.
Yeah.
And all. Yeah. I
And
love
so
it.
our pitch was, this should be a moment of reflection for the audience. Like, of course, we want to do a big, fancy sequence with interesting three-dimensional imagery, and we want to take the audience on this voyage. And we watched the movie and we're like, no, that's not right. Like, that is our ego speaking. The right thing for this movie is to do something that is quiet, contemplative. Let's just give the audience a moment to just sit there and think about what they have just watched, cry, and let's see the names of the credits.
It must be so satisfying.
So we
creatively,
did a really simple, evocative sequence that's just all about light. So you're just seeing this gauzy, colorful light. Does it evoke the idea of like going over the rainbow or through the rainbow? We think so. And the typography is beautiful and evocative and feels very Ozian. And that's a good example of a main on ends that, didn't have to tell a lot of story. And so it's just kind of atmospheric. But sometimes, you can get away. Oh, but then Game Night is another example, more in the vein of Prey or Iron Man, where, we're at the very end of Game Night. The big surprise has been revealed. And we came up with an idea.
which I love, by the way.
That's one of my favorite
fun.
projects
Yeah.
of all time, where you get to see some extra story of how the supposed villain came up with his plan. And we're down in his basement, and literally there's a post-it note that says Gary's plan for da 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 da. I don't want to give that away. If you haven't seen Game Night, go see it.
One
It's
of
an
the best
amazing
studio
comedy.
comedies
Yes.
in years. So funny.
And so we're down there, and the camera is flying in and around all of these objects that you've seen before, and all of his plans and notes, and all of the research that he's done. And it's just one long 2-minute shot. And it's probably one of my favorite projects of all time. But like The Kingdom, that does what that is, I think, the fullest expression of what a title sequence can do, right? It's telling story all the while you're seeing all of these credits. So it can be all of those different things. But yeah, I mean, the main question for a filmmaker and for us is, where should this belong? Should the story just start? Or is there a world where a title sequence can start this movie and help the audience get into it, like with Seven, for example? Or does the movie just begin and really the title sequence should live at the end? And in that case, should it be just a moment of contemplation, a moment of reflection? Should it keep the audience in their seats? What's the purpose of the sequence in this case? What should it be doing? But I think you had a question, and I...
Well, no,
Stop.
it's actually, well, kind of like, well, I was just gonna mention something about, as far as like the opening sequence or title sequence setting the vibe was Fincher's The Killer. We were talking about this. I thought was interesting was the way that I felt watching the opening felt almost like a TV show opening, but because of the way it's told. The story is told in chapters, but the chapters actually feel like TV episodes. And I thought it was a very interesting way of sort of setting that vibe. But that's all. I didn't want to deviate too much from where we're headed now with the conversation.
Well, I wanted to know, and this may be hard because you've worked on a lot and you don't seem to remember all of them, and I don't blame you. Is there a title sequence or trailer? Because Scott and I were talking about this. Is there a title sequence or trailer? And I think for you, especially a title sequence from the last few years or whatever that made you think, damn, I wish I had done that. Like, are there things that really impressed you? Oh, that's good to hear. I mean, that to me, it's like we were saying, it's such a memorable part of the experience. So I think it's a rich part of the industry.
Title sequence that I really
He's going to go back and go, I did work on that.
You
can tell me your favorite if it won't screw up your client relationship.
No, not at all. Well, I'd say on the title sequence end of things, really a lot's been happening in TV. I mean, I feel like really TV title sequences have just entered a renaissance. And there's a few companies doing just amazing work.
Do you guys do that kind of work for TV?
We
as
do,
well?
yeah. So we did a title sequence that I'm particularly proud of for She-Hulk: Attorney at Law,
Okay.
which was
I saw
a
that.
Marvel show, and so that show is about She-Hulk. She happens to also be an attorney. So we used this aesthetic of courtroom sketches. So these are made on ends. So at the end of every episode, you see a series of animated watercolor courtroom sketches. And what we show to the audience are basically things that they weren't able to see. So things that they hear about or the repercussions of actions in every episode. And we did a unique set of sketches for each of the 10 episodes. So they're all called, bespoke title sequences for each episode. And
Yeah, that's true. I have seen more of those, like Ozark and Black Rabbit.
Yes.
They have, I guess they're clues because they're at the beginning.
Yes.
And with Ozark, I remember thinking, oh, there's that.
Yes.
With Black Rabbit, I didn't remember as much, maybe because they
Yeah.
went by too quickly, but that is
sometimes
such an
with
interesting-
Ozark, we found ourselves going back and looking at the title after having watched the episode.
Yes,
And,
yes.
yeah. So we were very proud of that, and that's a good example of sort of a title sequence for a streamer for a television series. But there's a company, Elastic. They do pretty exceptional work. There's another company, Plains of Yonder, that I'm a big fan of. They did the title sequence for The Rings of Power, which I think is just extraordinarily beautiful. They also did a totally different style. They did a title sequence for the show The Decameron, which appears to be sort of traditionally animated, so by hand. And it's all just rats forming these cards and wrapping themselves around the typography. And I think it's so beautiful. I also really love the title sequence for The Last of Us. Did you watch that show?
Yeah.
So that was Elastic, and they won an Emmy for it. And I think that's a fantastic title sequence. I mean, it's evocative, it's emotional, totally appropriate. The materials are unique to that specific and appropriate for that show. I wish that I had done that. I'm trying to think. I haven't been watching a lot of movies
Have you
these
seen?
days.
Speaking of TV, did you see the Penguin?
I did not see the Penguin, but I have seen the title sequence.
It is interesting because they do the end it's very interesting for HBO because they're sort of known for their opening sequences, but in this they just show it's like a see-through logo that says Penguin or the Penguin, or I think it just says Penguin, and then they have the end credits.
Yeah,
that's where they do their big.
Yeah, those end sequences are beautiful. That's by a company called Filmograph.
Okay.
And I know those guys well, and they are so talented. They do a lot of great work. They also did the sequence for Wednesday, season 1 and 2. That's a beautiful sequence.
Yes.
And it's really interesting because that's the same company doing 2 entirely different styles. So the Penguin is a 2D animated one. I mentioned to you, it's mostly like flat artwork. Very, very graphic in nature, right? There's not really like 3D elements in there. Like you might come in and around the imagery, but it's flat.
Yeah, it's
And then you look
intentionally.
you look at Wednesday, and instead it's this big 3-dimensional move, 3D objects. The things that are on screen are all 3-dimensional. They're all moving, and that was another Emmy nominated sequence. So I'm envious of those companies, and they get so many cracks at the big stuff. Aspect is sometimes we get chances to work on sort of big tentpole projects like John Chu projects.
Sure.
Luckily, but honestly, like that's what we're trying to do more of, is work on those big tentpole projects, either in TV or film. And so it's sort of like we're trying to now go out and do the business development and meet new relationships.
I wouldn't sell yourself short on the tentpole projects because you guys just finished, I guess finished, we'll have to see, but the launch of Call of Duty Black Ops 7.
That's true.
And that, I mean,
A little
I've
game
heard-
called-
That's
I've
about
heard
as
of that.
it's about as big as it
Yeah.
gets. I mean, more people see and play those
Yeah.
things than a lot of movies.
I think when it comes to video games, it's like Call of Duty and Madden are probably the first two things that come
Yeah.
to
For
mind.
sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you've done a few of those over the years, I believe.
All of them.
Right. So how is that really different in that? And are you doing the marketing
Well,
more than you're doing the titles as well? Because I had a question about the marketing.
Yeah, well,
too?
both.
Okay.
Not on every. Well, so really, like the thing that gets us in the door is the relationship that we have with Activision, and working on the marketing for the game. So the way it works is a little different than, say, Netflix or Warner Brothers, for example. So Activision also has a big marketing team. That marketing team has a very long-standing relationship with two of our creative directors who run our games division. Ryan and David. So, Ryan and David have worked with Activision for many, 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 many years. Actually, predating Aspect working on games. We all worked at another company which no longer exists called Ant Farm.
I see.
Ant Farm was one of the really big tentpole marketing agencies in town for many years, and they almost, I would say, it could be argued that they invented game marketing for video games.
Wow.
And Ryan and David sort of came up through the ladder there, and so they came to Aspect, luckily, and we have my team has a great working relationship with them. So they are really sort of the magnet for that relationship with Activision. And so, yeah, so basically we are one of the main vendors working on any of those Call of Duty campaigns. And so that will start very early.
I would imagine.
I mean, just, as we're wrapping up one game, they're like, hey, here's what's coming up next. Let's start thinking about something. And so whether it is a teaser, a graphic teaser, and it has to be graphic because the game's not done.
Right.
Or whether it's sort of a mid-campaign piece, like a first trailer where gameplay is shown.
That's what I was going to ask you about. The actual gameplay footage is a really big deal because
Huge
then
deal.
people are saying, well, I can't remember which one it was. There was a Jonah Hill, a whole sequence. I think it was Call of Duty, right? Like
It was. He did a Call of Duty.
Yeah.
So those are great. Those are great
Yes.
ads, but that's not what the multiplayer looks like.
No,
So
and
when you do
we're
the-
not working on the live action
You're not doing,
trailer.
you're doing the okay. So the actual gameplay footage. It's kind of a silly question. Are you being given sequences of the footage, or do you guys actually sit down and try to figure out if you can play the game? Because I'm terrible at those games and have a lot of fun. But you see those
Yeah.
ads, and it's like he should have did 17 headshots in a row and stuff.
Yeah.
And
So, well, in an ideal situation, we are helping them with that.
Mm-hmm.
So they give us early versions of the game, and we have special versions of the hardware called dev kits that are able to take those builds. And those builds often, in a best case scenario, also have special tools for us. So, and then we have a whole team of, they're called capture artists. I call them digital cinematographers.
okay.
And we have a lead who is particularly skilled at leading a team of capture artists, or stick men, they're called, though they're not always men. And so when we're doing these capture sessions, we'll bring on a team of 6, 8, 12, however many is needed, stick men, and they will play the game. And then there are, our capture lead is usually one of the people who is using a controller inside the game to control a virtual camera
Okay.
that then shoots that gameplay. So, we are going to coordinate and choreograph what the avatars need to do. Okay, in this scene, I want you to burst through the door. You, player 2, are going to be over here, and we want player 1 to shoot player 2 and then continue to run through that door.
And you can put that camera anywhere.
Anywhere?
Yeah.
Anywhere.
Wow.
And so all of that is coordinated just like a live action shoot might be. But it is shot over and over and over again. And then, the game developer is that is their product. They want it to look the best it can possibly be. And so a lot of attention is paid to that footage of the game capture. But yeah, when we're working on, and you know, we're competing sometimes against other companies that do the same exact thing.
Sure.
We are ideally cutting that either gameplay trailer or then the multiplayer trailer, because that's a whole other thing. You want to show, in the case of Call of Duty, you know, what is the multiplayer experience like?
Right.
And so we have to portray that also accurately and make it look absolutely as good as it possibly can be.
I mean, I asked because I saw that trailer
Yeah.
2 days ago or something, and I was like, wow, that looks amazing.
Yeah.
Like really amazing. And that's as much a tribute to the game as what you're doing to tell me how amazing it is. And especially, I mean, a movie ticket, I go to the first screening of the day. It's no riffraff, and you know, it's $14.
You don't miss seeing it with an audience?
Sometimes I have. I'll go, like I saw Alien Romulus with an audience, and the kid next to me, the popcorn was too loud, but it was fun. But I think, you know, a game is what, they're $70 now or something. Like you have a very, very big role, even more than can I get you to the theater. It's like, this is something that somebody's going to spend hundreds of hours playing, especially the multiplayer. And so that is, to me, the fact that you keep doing that. I guess your relationship is with Activision, and then you would work with Treyarch, that sort of thing. So years and multiple games.
Yeah.
That's to me, that's a tribute to the quality of what you deliver. And it's the people from, you know, you're talking about people from a different company, from Ant Farm, and they made a new company or joined a new company or came with them, and they still want to work with you. Like that is, to me, that's a really special thing. Like, you don't do 12 movies with John Chu because you did 2 and he didn't like them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's pretty great.
That's true.
It's a relationship business, and these are very clear examples of obviously you work well together, but the stuff hits. It's really working, and that's got to be very exciting.
Thank you. Well, that's very nice of you to say. But it is a lot of hard work.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, a company and those clients like Activision, they have very high standards, rightfully so, and they have big problems to solve. And so I'm hoping, it seems like the takeaway is, hey, Aspect, we can rely on you. You know, if we need something on Friday and it's Monday and it's a big ask, we know that, you know, Ryan and David can solve those problems. And Ryan and David then lean on me and my team and his editors and our copywriters and our music team and all of that. And, you know, we really show up for them. And so I think that's why Activision keeps coming back to us game after game.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
I have a question to ask that I feel like in the times we're in right now, I feel like I'm required to ask this. How is the prevalence of AI impacting your business?
It's a really good question. It has been coming up a lot. I would say it's there are things that frighten us. I mean, I'm going to talk about it first from a standpoint of motion design, because generative AI, you know, the Mid-Journeys out there, you would think that as artists that we're sort of very scared about it. We kind of are, but at the same time, it's clear that there's just things that it can't do or doesn't do well. Our clients, the marketing executives, the marketing teams, they get so specific with us about what they're looking for that the work that we do has to be very art directable. They are going to want to be able to tweak and change every color, every font, every serif, every background. Okay, you want a sky in that Superman main title? I mean, we couldn't fathom even using an AI sky, because what if that cloud bothers somebody and needs to be moved, or the nature of how the clouds move isn't quite right. AI just isn't that directable yet. Some people may be listening to this and saying, well, of course it can. Well, yeah, in some cases, yes. But, you know, it's just sort of too scary for us to be able to rely on that. Sure. Now, that saying, it's a wonderful tool for pitching. So when we're pitching ideas out, we want to find the easiest, cheapest way to communicate our idea the best. And so, on occasion, it's a great tool, but it's a little bit of a catch-22 because sometimes you'll show something to somebody and they're like, I want exactly just that.
I've been there. Yeah.
And then it's like, you can't use just that. Most of the studios want to know that you haven't used generative AI in the final product. But to come up with ideas, to show it in a mood board, hey, this is the kind of tone we're going for. This is the kind of painterly quality we're going to go for. This is the kind of shape that we expect to use. Absolutely, we use it. And does that mean that, maybe that, the artist that we were going to use to spend a week painting that didn't get that job? Yeah, perhaps, right? I was talking to a friend who's a storyboard artist the other day. He is definitely losing jobs because of generative AI, because that small production company or even that big agency, needs to inexpensively as possible, make that 6-frame storyboard, which is just line art showing where the camera is positioned on that shoot. You can absolutely quite easily use prompting to get to that. And that storyboard artist who previously, got a day or 2 days work drawing that out is not going to get that work. If I were a storyboard artist, I would be very scared about my future. That said, James Cameron is putting together a storyboard for imagine, some high-level director is shooting a commercial in between movies. That person is going to want supreme control over exactly what is being drawn. They're still hiring a human to draw that stuff no matter what. But I think there's a lot of mid and lower budget stuff where that's not going to be as important. And just an idea needs to come across. AI is going to have a huge difference. It's a great idea generator and research tool. Sometimes I may not have time to sort of learn up on, let's say we were working on the Odyssey, for example. If I needed like a down and dirty, like, hey, give me the characters, give me the history, summarize this for me. It's incredible, right? You can really use it for that.
Certainly easier than going back to 9th grade and trying to remember all of that.
Or finding it in a card catalog.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
God.
Or the microfiche.
Yeah, exactly. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think we want to wrap up. John has been very generous with his time. We just went to the future of AI. I have, let's go back to your youth kind of question. We're story punk. We're fascinated with how stories are told. I've always enjoyed the storytelling of trailers. It's its own discipline and everything, and it's tied directly to the projects. And I've certainly seen trailers that made me more interested in seeing the movie or made me excited about seeing the movie. When you were an undergraduate student, you studied comparative literature.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So that's essentially comparing how different cultures and places tell stories.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have anything that you can think of that influenced the way that you tell your stories now and work that comes from thinking about things like that? Because there are people who would say, I studied English, I studied Russian literature, I studied French literature. Those are all legitimate things. But comparative literature is a different sort of take on it. So that's kind of a left field question for you, but I don't know
I
how
consumed.
you think about storytelling and what you learned about storytelling.
Oh boy,
and
that's a
because
good
also you
question.
are also doing ads that will be seen, and trailers and everything that will be seen internationally, right? I mean, people will see this movie all over the world. They may see your promotions of it all over the world. So I'm sure if you're doing a movie, I don't know how specific you get to do the version in India versus the version in the United States, but there are ways you can say, I think any person will feel this. That's a pretty big ask.
Yeah, I think that's really the key for how studying comp lit has served me down the line, because it's a couple different things. I mean, for me, what sort of, I don't know if it drew me or if it was just a benefit of studying comp lit was, I think I came to comp lit because I had been so well traveled luckily. I was an exchange student when I was in high school. I went to Mexico for a summer and lived with a family in a tiny little town in Mexico for a summer. And I came out of that summer speaking fluent Spanish, having all these relationships with incredible people who I met and lived with and became friends with in Mexico. Then I did the same thing in high school. And so after I graduated from high school, I went and lived in Sardinia for a year.
Okay.
And I lived in a tiny little mountain town in the middle of the Mediterranean, in an island in the Mediterranean. And I was playing high school basketball with Italians, and I had an Italian girlfriend and wonderful friends in Italian. And of course, after a year, my Italian was fluent.
So you speak several languages.
Speak Italian.
So yeah.
And then I did the same thing my junior year in college. So I lived in Florence for a year. I mean, coming to this from a very privileged position, of course. But then, as I was studying comparative literature and I was reading in the native Italian and I was reading in the native Spanish and reading, whether it was Garcia Marquez in Spanish or Borges, this is bizarre abstract Spanish literature, or whether it was Pirandello and I was reading plays in Italian. I think that, I was doing that. And of course, I think there's something to reading in the native language and thinking about how things are translated and how stories are told cross-culturally. But I had also lived in other countries and I had absorbed those cultures. And I had the experience of being an American in another country and being an English speaker in another country and learning those languages and dreaming in those other languages, which I think kind of serves one just as a humanist. Mm-hmm. So then I went into filmmaking, right? And so I was thinking about, I think it kind of broadens one's perspectives as a filmmaker, storyteller, or even a trailer maker to think about how will people outside of myself, how will people outside of my community take in this piece of art or understand what I'm trying to say. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, you definitely have, because I personally am fascinated by languages. I love reading literature from all over the world. I always feel like I'm missing something. Same with movies, but especially with books. I'm missing something. How can I figure it out? Like one of my favorite books is Bulgakov's The Master and Margarita. I have like 5 different translations. Mm-hmm. I don't have a favorite. I just like that there are different flavors and that they are all legitimate because they are all a Russian novel, a single text that, his has a lot of versions depending on the censorship, but that's a single text that individual human beings that speak Russian and English approached. And to me, that's the kind of thing AI can never do.
Absolutely.
Because it's about the human decisions. The same way that AI isn't going to come up with the concept of the end credits of game night. How would it execute it? A lot of different ways. You could storyboard it with them, all that kind of stuff. But the human element that really comes through in storytelling, and I think it's fascinating to be able to come out of that place of I've been to different cultures, which is not a very American thing sometimes. Yeah. And it doesn't matter our geographic isolation from these other places, all that kind of stuff. So to me, it's one of those things that makes sense that you would end up in a storytelling field because that's what you do.
It's also because, and this is the draw. I mean, I actually, when I mentor, people who are considering going to film school or they're considering studying fine art, I often sort of suggest to them, maybe wait on that until you think about grad school. And now, fill your brain sponge up with as much as you possibly can, right?
That's great advice.
Go to a liberal arts. Think about going to a liberal arts college, right? And for me, Comp Lit was just like that, where it was just, I read so much. And so maybe it's just about cramming a lot of story in there that really helps you as a filmmaker.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any last questions, sir?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything that we were interested in. Is there anything last words that you wanted to? Not last words. You're not on death row.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm really flattered to be here, and it's really been a pleasure. If you're curious about learning more about title sequences or Aspect, for Aspect, you can go to teamaspect.com. and you can see the width and breadth of all of our wonderful marketing work. If you look at the bottom of the page, you can see that we work on theatrical work, streaming work, games work, our digital social work, and you'll see a little button there for design. And that's where you can see my team's specific work. Although, of course, our work is in all of the trailers that we see. And I really thank you for having me. I love the podcast. I like hearing you guys talk and
we
banter.
appreciate you taking
I haven't
your
always.
time.
It's interesting because I haven't always seen what you're talking about, and so it's really interesting to listen to those where I have seen the movie. It's a tough challenge you guys have to kind of talk about things, not spoil or spoil. It's a tricky
Sometimes
thread.
we accidentally spoil like right off the bat. We try to hold off. We do have a format that we follow, but it's sort of we're loose with it, and I know sometimes it's like right off the bat within the first 5 minutes we're like, okay, well we're already in spoiler
Exactly.
territory.
Yeah.
So
I also I have been told by fans of the show, which the fact that exists is very flattering. So thank you very much for listening.
Yes.
But there are people who have told me, I want to see that movie because I listen to your podcast, and it doesn't bother them that they know what's going on in weapons or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is and I know you appreciate that. It's so fun to run around with your arms out.
Yeah.
But
You've seen my videos.
yes,
My security.
But thanks, Facebook. But other people have said, I want to listen first so that I'll know what to look for, which is a different kind of experience. And that's why I like that, we've been able to do movies that maybe you haven't seen, that they're 25 years old, or maybe you're 25 years old and you don't know what Dog Day Afternoon is, but also we can talk about weapons and current things and things like that.
Yeah.
So speaking of current things, is there anything you'd like to tell us about that is coming up? I know Black Ops 7 we've discussed, and Wicked for Good is about to come out as we're recording
Black Ops 7
this.
dropped
And things that
yesterday.
you can talk about. Nothing I want you to get sued for.
Sure. I mean, it's really those things. You can check out our SpongeBob, the Search for
yes.
SquarePants trailer, which came out
nice.
last week. Yeah, I mean, I think for any of your listeners, if you go to the website, or of course, if you follow at Team Aspect on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, you can get a feed and see our work as it comes out. What else? I mean, I'm so excited that For Good is coming out, because we did take sort of, well, you'll see. We took some of what we started in part 1 and expanded upon it in For Good, and it's a beautiful movie.
I'm sure.
And I love the team that made it. They worked so hard on that movie for so long, and I hope it's a huge hit. Yeah, we're working on some other stuff that I can't talk about quite yet.
Sure.
But we're very excited about it. So yeah, lots more to come.
Good.
awesome. Well, I guess that's a wrap on our special guest, Jon Berkowitz. And we will be back next week. Jon will be joining us for our next episode, where we'll be talking about the movie Sneakers. And in the meantime, you can follow us on our Instagram page at StoryPunkPod, and that will have all of our updates. And also for the Boomers, we're on Facebook. And also,
you can find us on all of your favorite podcast services, and probably some you haven't heard of either.
yes, the big ones and the little ones. And I am on Letterboxd as Storypunk Scott. And
I am Solid Gould.
do you have any?
I'm not on Letterboxd.
That's okay.
Letterboxd is a good time. It's fun.
It's fun. I've only got on it recently, and it's fun. There's all kinds of people on there, and it's fun. There's very well thought out reviews, and there's some like goofy reviews,
And I have written both of those.
yes, me as well. I particularly enjoyed my goofy one for Jason X, which just for the record is our worst performing episode. I was just looking at the stats, but and I guess that pretty much is it. And
Thank you, Jon.
Yes, thank you so much
you're
for
so
your time.
welcome. Thanks for having me.
And
It's been
remember,
a lot of fun.
story matters.